Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from, and welcome to the fifth and absolute final technical webinar for cities for this year's One Planet City Challenge. And we've had a few of them over the last few months, and we are now wrapping up the reporting period, and this is our final webinar. So thank you for attending, and we hope that this can be useful for you. Carla, can you go to the next slide, please? Excellent. So together with Carla, we are the webinar presenters. So I will present myself. My name is Jennifer Lenhart, and I am the program manager for WWF's One Planet City Challenge.
My name is Carla Mariño, and I'm working here at ICLE with the coordination of the One Planet City Challenge as well as with the cCR.
Fantastic. So you have our contact information if you need us for later. All right, next agenda. Okay, so this is just the agenda. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but to briefly say that I will discuss a little bit of why WWF has the One Planet City Challenge, and then Carla will go into further detail on the registration and reporting for cities. And data input, and then if we have time, I will briefly go through the evaluation criteria in order to give you a few extra moments for questions. And just to let you know, this webinar might run over just a bit. That happened in the earlier session. There's a lot of detail, and to do it to the right time, sometimes we go a little longer. So if you can attend, great, and if you have to hop off, there will be a recording as well, but hopefully you can join us for the whole thing. All right, next slide. Excellent. So from WWF's side, we have a program called the One Planet Cities program. And how we at WWF see One Planet Cities are cities that enable all people to thrive and prosper while respecting the ecological limits of our one and only planet. And this is important, the two components here, the ecological limits of our own one and only planet, but also that we do understand that cities need to thrive and prosper, and in different parts of the world, this means different things. So trying to find the balance is key to how we promote One Planet Cities. Thank you. Next slide, please. And just a little bit of background, for most of you on this call, you probably know that we are living in an urban era with over 50% of human population and growing living in cities. And cities are actually responsible for over 70% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. Despite this, though, despite this kind of very steep percentage of greenhouse gases allocated or as a result of cities, cities are doing really ambitious things to address climate change, whether it be on mitigation, adaptation, on policies or planning, or engaging of their citizens. And what we'd like to see is that global investments, together with local policies, are really tailored to support cities to become solution hotspots to address climate change. And at WWF, we see ourselves as some sort of bridge builder, linking different organizations, working with organizations and partners like ICLE, but also closely with local governments on the City Challenge and the citizens in the cities that we collaborate with. Thank you. Next slide. So for WWF, we've been working on the cities program for about 5.5 years now. This started in Sweden with WWF Sweden, and we had a national competition the first year. And since then, in 2012, we teamed up with ICLE, making our national competition a global one. And I want to just highlight that now we are calling this the One Planet City Challenge, but previously this was known as the Earth Hour City Challenge, and it really tried to build from the enthusiasm and excitement that has been seen in cities across the world for Earth Hour, which really demonstrates that citizens are calling for climate action. And we see the City Challenge as a way to emphasize what cities are doing more long term. So we've had, since the start of our cities program, the City Challenge, we've had 328 cities participate. These have been ambitious cities with strong climate actions, and we try to promote learning and sharing between them. We select both national and global winners, or actually I should say an international expert jury is in charge of selecting those winners. We are not involved actually from WWF's side more than just as observers, but we give that to an expert panel that I will explain to you in a bit later on. The cities that have thus far been global winners include Vancouver, Canada, Cape Town, South Africa, and most recently Paris, France. So the pictures you can see here, the top picture is announcing the Parisian winner under the Eiffel Tower, and the picture below is actually the global award ceremony that was held last year in October 2016 in Quito, Ecuador, just prior to the Habitat 3 conference. And this is quite important to show the celebration of cities, especially right before big decisions are made at the international level there at the Habitat 3 meeting. Next slide, please. So this 2017-2018 One Planet City Challenge really invites cities to report on the cCR, which you'll hear about more shortly. But what we really want to emphasize is that when cities do so, they demonstrate their commitment, they are accountable in doing so, and they ensure transparency and visibility of their local climate actions. We're keen to see that cities report on ambitious climate actions, and really those that align with what was set out in the Paris Agreement, and how can cities ensure that nation states live up to what they have committed to in the Paris Agreement. And finally, we have this year a thematic highlight on urban transportation and mobility. And we are really keen to see what cities are doing to creatively address mobility. There are so many great actions out there, and we really want to learn from yours and highlight them. And in doing so, we will actually have, in addition to the national and global winners, we will have a mobility champion that will be selected. And finally, the last point on this slide is very relevant for us to announce, and that is that with WWF, we work in 100 different countries, within the City Challenge in 30 different countries. And we know that in different countries and also in the different cities there within, that cities have access to different capacities, different starting points, different climate and political situations. So we will take that into account when cities are selected for both the national and global titles. So thank you. Next slide, please. So just briefly, why should your city participate in the City Challenge? Of course, to increase local awareness. Now, this local awareness is for your citizens to know a bit more about what's happening in their city, but also we found that it can be useful for the different departments within one city government to see how they are all together addressing climate change. Of course, visibility and attention is important. And this includes both media attention from news sources, but also social media attention from WWF, ICLEI, and other partners. And then, well, I guess I'll share two other things here. One of them is feedback. Cities that will receive feedback at different stages along the City Challenge. So for the candidates up to the finalists and the winners, all cities will receive feedback from the expert panel. I'm sorry, the finalist cities will receive feedback from the jury, and then along the way we will try to ensure that all cities get at least some level of feedback and comparison for the different cities. And then collaborative pressure. I want to highlight this because together cities can really demonstrate to the UN bodies, to nation states, the importance of cities and urban climate change action to really effectively address climate change. So together, we believe that this is a very strong aspect of the city challenge. So I'll stop there. If you could go to the next slide, please. This I'm going to touch base just very briefly on. At the moment, we're in the final stage of the submission of city data, so step 1. And thereafter, cities' data will be pre-screened, allowing for the selection of finalists. And those finalists, up to 3 per country, will be reviewed by the international expert jury. And then the jury will select both the national and global winners. And then once those cities are selected, but before they are actually announced on who wins, we will have a public engagement campaign in all finalist cities. And this is called We Love Cities, and you'll find out more about that if your city is selected as a finalist, and how we try to work and partner with citizens and different organizations in the finalist cities to really celebrate what is happening in the cities that we love. And finally, we will have award ceremonies as the one I showed you in Quito, and that will probably be sometime in June of next year. So next slide, please. This one I'm going to focus only on the last point, and that is the final deadline. And the final deadline to submit all of this information is to do so on the 29th of September. So if you have any questions before, I mean, it does take some time to do the submission, so get started on it, ask us questions, work with your local or regional ICLE or WWF counterpart as well to help you get there. But that is the deadline that is most relevant for us at this moment. Next slide, please. And I think this is about one of my last slides before we go over to Carla. But if you've seen within the cCR, there is quite a bit of information that cities do need to offer. But in order to be a candidate for the City Challenge, we require 3 of the 4, in addition to your basic city profile, which will include information so that we kind of know which city we are referring to. And that is the targets and commitments, the action plan, a greenhouse gas inventory, as well as actions, preferably with a focus on mobility. Now, if you can't submit all of these, do submit 3 of the 4 in order to move on to become a national, or to become a candidate, and then eventually, potentially, a national or global winner. So I will stop there. Is that? Oh yes, sorry, one last slide, forgot about this one. So this is the cities or the countries that are participating in the City Challenge this year. There are 30 countries, and if your city is not in one of these countries, then unfortunately at this stage, it's not possible. And the idea there is just that these WWF offices have committed to run the City Challenge at the national level, and that they can provide better feedback than we could here in Sweden for all the different countries. So we hope that it will continue to grow. It has grown in the past, and we're excited that there's increasing interest to report on your emissions and action plans, but also to share cities in particular countries and across the globe. Next slide. And that's my side. So thank you, Carla.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Welcome everyone from my side as well. And now we are going to move to the reporting section. So I'm going to explain to you how that is done. So first, a little bit of the Carbon Climate Registry background. The Carbon Climate Registry, the cCR, is the world's leading platform for cities, towns, and regions to voluntarily report their climate commitment in action. It was launched in 2010, and now it's operated by the Bond Center for Local Climate Action and Reporting here at ICLEI. The cCR is currently having different elements in regards to climate action. For example, it's holding greenhouse gas emissions and energy, climate hazards, targets in regards to emissions reduction, adaptation and resilience, renewable energy and energy efficiency. And also it enables reporting entities to track their mitigation and adaptation actions. So that is just a little bit on the background. So very briefly, just for your information, for those of you that are not familiar with it. And now we are going to see now in detail what this means for your city's participation in the City Challenge and what is needed to do that. So let's see. So to participate in the City Challenge, a city needs to open an account in the cCR. So to become a reporting entity, and for that they just need to go to carbon.org and click participate. Here they will get a screen where they will be able to put some basic city information, basic contact point information, agree to the terms and conditions, and confirm. Here is the screen. And this will be sent to us. After this, we will be checking on the data that is sent by the city, and we will activate the account. So please don't think that the cCR account is has not been effectively that you have not registered before you get a confirmation from us, because we need to check on this data, and that is why there is these two steps. So first, the city opens a cCR account, and from here, once they log in, they'll be able to see this screen, and there they can simply tick to join the City Challenge. They need to accept the terms and conditions. And then here again, we are going to receive an email, and we are going to look if the city is in a participating country or not, and then simply send a confirmation letter. But in all cities that are in the participating countries will be accepted. So that is the rule. Another thing, the city can already start reporting, start downloading their pre-populated forms before they do this step, before they get this confirmation. And they will be accepted if they are in a participating country. So that is so that they can advance before they get this confirmation. So the city has opened a cCR account. They have expressed interest in participating in the One Planet City Challenge. And now let's look at, they need to confirm. And now let's look the reporting itself. So for that, the city will have to log in, and they will be able to see there are two cases: data that the city already sent before, for example, for previous versions of the City Challenge. And there will be the case when the city is new. Still, the city has reported some basic data, like you saw for registration. So this is information that will be pre-populated in their unique reporting forms. So in this part where it says reporting status, the cities can go to download their previously reported data. So they can find here their GPCs, let's say greenhouse gas inventories according to the GPC protocol, the simplified inventory, so non-GPC compliant, government greenhouse gas inventories, energy performance, also actions. They'll be able to download and update this from that screen. Now, a little bit lower, cities will be able to see this download new reporting sheets. From here, they'll be able to download what is needed to overwrite, for example, in the main sheet, you will see now very shortly how is the structure of these sheets and what it means. So here they can find the core sheet. I will show you what there is, which elements can be found in the core sheet, the action sheet, and the simplified inventory. Jennifer was showing the requirements for participating in the city challenge, for becoming a candidate. We are trying to promote the use of the GPC for transparency, but we also understand that if the city does not have the capacity yet to develop an inventory according to the GPC, they can still use the simplified inventory version, and they can download it from their account here. Okay, so now this is how it's going to look in the city's profile, and they can download them themselves. But in case the city has any problems at all, please send us an email at carbon@iclay.org, and then we can also send these reporting forms to the city directly. So just please let us know. We are checking the carbon account on a daily basis. Okay, so now you know where the data can be found. Now let's look already at the data input. So let's look at the reporting forms that we have. We have the core reporting form, and inside the core reporting form, we have all these elements. We have the account information, which is mandatory to complete for the city challenge. We have the profile as well, which is also mandatory. We have targets and commitments. That is one of the 4 options. We have the action plans. It's another option. We have the GPC. Energy performance, it is not one of the options. So energy performance is not required for the city challenge, but it can also be completed. Greenhouse gas government inventory, also it can be completed and count as an inventory, a greenhouse gas inventory, but we are looking to have community level inventories. And then we have adaptation and resilience, which is not required. And finally, mobility data, which is an added sheet. Any city that looks to go for the special mention on mobility, they need to report this sheet, at least the modal splits, and I will show you now a little bit more in detail. But this is an extra sheet, so it's not part of the 4 requirements or the 4 options, and from there the city can choose 3. So please take that into consideration. So that was the core reporting form, and now we are going to see a second sheet. So this is separate, which is the action reporting form. Later on, we are going to see in detail the contents of this reporting form. So to summarize, there are 2 sheets because the greenhouse gas inventory that we want to promote is the GPC, and it's in the core reporting form. So please be aware that if the city is willing to report, for example, 5 actions, then they need to report 1 of these action reporting forms per action. That means 5 actions plus the core sheet. Okay, so that is the structure of the reporting sheets, and now we are going to go and see the content already of each of it. So let's look at the account info. It's a simple sheet. It only contains the information of the city, for example, the coordinates, and we ask that the city provides accurate and precise coordinates, so with at least 3 decimals, so that it can be accurately placed on the map and not have some kilometers of misplaced, and this will impact a small city, for example. So please make sure the data that is provided here is really accurate and updated. Also, in this lower section of the account info sheet, the city can provide the liaison contact information. Also, please make sure this is the updated data. Then let's look at the city profile, and we are going to be seeing some examples from the city of Umeå all along this presentation. So here the city can provide a description of their city, so they can choose, it's a text, and we encourage that cities do this in English so that this is accessible for a bigger audience, no? Than in comparison to their local language. Let's look at Umeå's example. Center of growth in northern Sweden, doubling its population over the last 50 years. It's one of your fastest growing cities. One of 7 strategic long-term objectives states that Umeå's growth is rich with social, ecological, and economic sustainability, aiming towards the vision of 200,000 citizens in 2050. Relevant peer city for Europe, living in medium-sized cities, ready to use demos, examples, and initiatives of smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. So that is a very interesting description of a city. As you see, it's not given data that can be provided later on, and you will see. So just is actually explaining the identity of the city and how this is related also to their sustainability goals. No? So let's look now. The city is also able to provide some geopolitical information. Such as area, population, GDP, geography type, population change, main economy sector, annual government operational budget. And we asked the city, excuse me for a bit. I'm sorry, I have a little cold. Okay, so we asked that this data is also it's accurate, and we are going to be looking at the numbers. No, we are going to compare that the numbers make sense to each other. So, for example, in the case of GDP, please look at this number and make sure it's consistent with the other information. And if there isn't a GDP already official and the city is making estimates, it's also fine. If the city is making estimates from the national level, for example, but please be consistent with these estimates. Yeah. So that is all, because we are going to be looking for this, and we are going to make an observation if we see that this is, yeah, it's not consistent. So please take care here. And please know that in the new website that the Carbon is relaunching, these numbers will be shown in the city profile website specifically. So this will be like the presentation of the city. No? So also that's why it's important to send everything that is asked in the offline reporting sheet, like a logo, also a photo of the mayor, so that this page can be complete and not looking empty. Okay, now let's look at the city profile lower section. So in this part, the city can talk about their planning and commitments in regard to mitigation and adaptation. So whether the city has an action plan in mitigation or adaptation, they can indicate that here. So whether it's in progress, whether they don't have it, whether they are planning to undertake one. And please make sure that this is consistent with what is reported in the action plan tab, which is number 4, and you will see this later, because we are going to be checking that this information is not contradictory, no? That if the city is saying that they have an action plan, then they are reporting the action plan in the action plans tab. And let's look at an example now. Yes, also these other factors that the city can report in this part, the general sustainability goal, factors that amplify climate change, for example, an older population, or impact in businesses. Let's look at the example. So, positive effect and negative effect on agriculture and forestry around Umeå. Future increased precipitation and temperature may result in increased harvest. Increase of pests affecting the crops. Shorter period of snow may have a negative effect on winter-based tourism. Okay, so the city is really contextualizing what are the impacts in their city, no, according to their economy and their features, their characteristics. Now, this part on governance, also the city here will be able to describe what are the processes that are taken for reviewing climate change progress. Let's look at the example. The strategies in the comprehensive plan are being monitored frequently. A web-based tool called Quality of Life Barometer shows the progress in local environmental and public health. The travel survival how to plan public transport, how to develop walking and cycling routes, etc. So again, very general but very relevant information, also because it's explaining how this is done shortly and concisely. Also, the impact of national activities, whether these would be positive or negative. For example, constraints that can be coming from the national level, or umbrella programs that may favor climate action. Let's look at the example. Umeå implements and adapts to national and regional objectives. Sweden has some of Europe's most ambitious objectives regarding climate change. National funding for projects functioning as a catalyst effect on some of the city's activities. National taxes on fossil fuels make the shift to renewable energy more financially lucrative. Then cities can also talk about how they integrate the greenhouse gases emission reduction targets to their master planning, to their overall development planning. No? Umeå's comprehensive plan main focus is sustainability, a shift from car dependency towards sustainable transport. The majority of urban growth should be within a 5-kilometer radius and along the public transport system main lines. Pedestrians, bicyclists, and public transport passengers are prioritized. The comprehensive plan outlines the development of the city with an outlook to 2050. Drivers for tackling climate change, so for example, impacts that are already observed, and also economic opportunities. We have an example here. Climate change can have a positive effect on agriculture and forestry around Umeå, with future increased precipitation and temperature. Several initiatives regarding business models and innovative solutions and sustainable biofuels may have a chance to expand. So, yes, so now we are moving to the next section, the next tab, and this is a tab that is also one of the 4 options that can be reported to fulfill the requirements, the 3 requirements for becoming a candidate. So in the cCR, the cities can report different kind of targets in different elements. Now we have greenhouse gas emission reductions, we have renewable energy, we have energy efficiency targets. Those 3 are very tailored targets, so we ask for specific information, and also some information is predefined according to what's chosen, to the type of target that is chosen. And then we have the adaptation and resilience targets and the other mitigation targets, and these targets they are more open for what their contents are in regards to. For example, the city can define the means of measuring themselves, no? The target. So I'm going to show you just a little bit the type of targets that we have. For example, in greenhouse gas emission reduction, we have 4 types of targets in which this is the way in which the targets can be expressed. So we have the baseline scenario, we have absolute base year, we have the carbon intensity, and we have the fixed level. So this is looking at whether the target is looking, for example, at a percentage of reduction in regards to baseline emissions, or whether the target is looking at the intensity of a commitment that is done, taking into consideration also, for example, a unit of energy, a unit of GDP, or per capita. Or we have the fixed level greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, where it's simply as its name, so it's a fixed level of emissions that are committed. And for setting these targets, cities can refer to the GPC, to chapter 11, if I'm not mistaken, and they'll have all the explanation of these targets. So they are pretty straightforward. And by completing the information that you will see in a minute here, also you will be able to construct these targets. No? Please keep in mind that these targets, the greenhouse gas emission reduction, the renewable energy, and the energy efficiency, they will all be based on the values of either the community level or the government operations. So these are not targets for only sectors. At the moment, we are not collecting the information in that way. So any target that the city is reporting. It's in regards to either, for example, the emissions of the community or the emissions of government operations, but not in regards to the emissions of a part of the community. No. Also, the city can select where are the sectors of implementation of the target, and this is information that can be tackled. But you will see this now. But please take into consideration these targets are for the community or for the government operations level, and that is the baseline values that have to be taken into consideration. So let's look at the renewable energy targets. Again, here we have 4 kinds of targets, which is the way in which they will be measured, either in energy consumption in megawatts hour or in installed capacity of renewable energy in megawatts. And then we have also shares in either finally energy consumption or in primary energy mix. So given in percentages of renewable energy, in these 4 aspects. So the city can choose that, and then they will automatically have to provide a value in the units that are for that given target. So please make sure that if you have a target description, that you really see what kind of target you are looking at. And looking at the units of target could be one very good way to understand which kind of target it is. No? In energy efficiency, we have 2 targets, so improvements in energy efficiency in either final energy consumption or in the primary energy mix. Now we are going to see an example. We need to have a description of the target, possibly including everything else. That would be optimal. So for example, Umia Energy has an overall objective to be climate neutral in 2018. The type, baseline scenario, reduction target, boundary, government operations, units, tons of CO2. There are other possibility would be tons of CO2 equivalent. The target value, 100%. We cannot take a target that doesn't have a value. The city cannot commit to a target without a value, and also the baseline is very important. The target year, base value, base year, and adoption year. So that is, in the end, how a target should look. And please remember that for adaptation or resilience targets and also for other mitigation targets, the city needs to set themselves the means of measuring. But we are going to be looking that these means of measuring are related to the description of the target and that they are consistent. And please remember to provide this description of the targets in English. Otherwise, this information will not be able to be treated by the evaluators in the evaluation phase. No? Yeah, so if you have any question in regards to target, please just let us know. And then you can also go to the GPC. This is available in English and in Spanish. Excuse me. Hello again. Okay, so now we are moving to action plans. In action plans, cities will be able to report their climate action plan in mitigation or low emission development or in adaptation and resilience, or a climate integrated plan that has both of these components. So what do we understand and how we categorize an action plan? Because there are many possibilities now in the action, in the climate action world. So we are looking here at a document that is a set of actions. So it's not one project, it's a set of actions that are planned in time in order to mitigate or adapt to climate change. So this plan will be overarching. It will cover possibly several sectors. And yeah, that is what we are going to be looking at as an action plan. No? So many stakeholders involved also. So let's look at examples, and let's look also a little bit on the content of the action plan. So, action plan for decreasing of greenhouse gases. This is a mitigation plan, contains 28 different mitigation measures in 8 different areas: building, energy efficiency, waste, transport, planning, etc. The action plan complements other existing strategies such as the comprehensive plan and air quality management plan. Main focus is mitigation, but it also includes actions focusing on climate adaptations. Now let's look at an adaptation resilience plan, comprehensive plan for a sustainable city. The city is considering the effect on future climate change as a serious threat to the region. Umea has a big river that's running through the city, and in our comprehensive plan for the city, we are taking precaution for floods caused by extreme rainfall. We are expecting more extreme weather, working closely with the University of Umea in this matter. So as you see, I've highlighted the relevant information. So here, the city is looking at the facts, identifying, sort of giving a general overview of their vulnerabilities, and also looking at the stakeholders. So this gives an idea of what the plan is englobing. No? Now, let's look at the reporting here more specifically. So also an integrated plan, which will have both mitigation and adaptation components. So we will need to have a supporting document. Please make sure that the city provides the exact name of the file that will be sent as a supporting document. These supporting documents need to be sent to carbon@icla.org together with the reporting forms. So if the supporting document is in a local language, we don't expect that the city translate the whole climate plan, but we expect that there is an extract containing the relevant information translated to English. Otherwise, again, the information cannot be evaluated. So please consider that. Now, in the summary, please include what will be the co-benefits. What are the expected co-benefits of the plan, the climate plan, with its implementation? So please make sure that this is reported, because the jury is going to be looking at this. Also, in regards on what was the public participation to come up with the plan, whether consultative processes in place, whether meetings, any kind of public participation processes, please report them and explain them briefly, shortly and concisely, no? So that the space and the allowance of words can be used at maximum. Also, the stakeholder engagement in regards to the implementation of the plan, so not in relevance only to how the plan was elaborated, but also in regards to when the plan is going to be implemented, what is the stakeholder engagement? Has there been an identification process to see what are the stakeholders, how they are going to interact? Please describe that in a general way if possible, and then possibly in the extract a little more. Yes, so just remember all the relevant information. Also, if the plan contains any kind of commitment, for example, greenhouse gas emission reduction in the case of mitigation, please include that. And also the action plan reporting sheet allows for choosing sectors where they are expected to be implemented now. So this can simply be ticked, and yeah. In the lower part, the city can report the estimated emission reductions. Also, energy savings and renewable energy generation. So if the city has that available, it's also very good for the evaluation phase. Yeah. So now let's look at the GPC. In our offline reporting form, the cities are able to report their greenhouse gas inventory according to this protocol, to the GPC. And now here, what you are seeing is the first part, and here there is a little bit of information on on the entity and on the inventory as well. So the reporting period, I only have to say here that this cannot be this year, so 2017 to sum up. No, it has to be previous to that, prior to that, and also information on the entity, that is area, GDP, boundaries, population. Please know that we are going to be checking the consistency of this data with the one provided in the profile sheet. So please check that this is accurate. And then here there is inventory information, so supporting documents. This will include the activity data, the emission factors used for calculating the tons of emissions, and the global warming potential. You can learn more of this in the GPC. Also, if the city uses a tool or calculator to come up with the inventory, then they can select that. And if the inventory was verified, they can also describe that. So yes, the sheet allows for describing how the inventory was done. No? Now let's look at the emissions part. So like the GPC, the cities have they can report their emissions according to sectors and subsectors, and also they have the notation keys available when, for example, an emission is not occurring or is not estimated, or if it's included somewhere else, they can use the notation keys for that. Here you see all the gases and also the totals in CO2 equivalents. Please make sure this is reported, because now shortly you will see a summary table. So it's just a summary that takes all the emissions provided by the city and gives some results according to the GPC. So to the I will show you in a minute. And so it is important that this column is completed, no, at least the total CO2 equivalent. Also, the cities can provide and should provide activity data assessments, so to describe how well was their data in terms of quality. So was this first-hand data, local data measured on site, or was this data from the national level, for example, that was used? What were the emission factors used? Were these default emission factors, or were these calculated for the specific, for example, fuel? No? And what were the methodologies that were used? These on the methodologies can be found on the GPC, so cities need to describe that. And then the exclusions also explain, everything. So then there is a summary table. Cities do not complete this. This happens automatically after completing the table, the total CO2 equivalents. Then the cities will be able to see by sector their territorial emissions, which is scope 1, and you can see that in the GPC, or according to two kinds, which is the basic and basic plus. And you can go to the GPC and to look which sectors are covered here and from which scopes. So this is just a general overview for you to understand how the reporting form is composed in terms of that, and just for you to know that this is not a tool, it's just a reporting form, no? where you can report the outcomes of the inventory that the city developed. Now let's go to see the actions. And in the actions, we're going to begin here with a name. And here I would like to ask the cities to provide a very clear and descriptive name that doesn't contain words or names that are very local, because then it will be more difficult to handle this information. No? So names in English, please, and simply that describe what the action is doing. And now the summary. The summary is the opportunity for the cities to explain what is the action doing, what is the problem that the action is solving, and what is the background of this. What are the intended outcomes that the city wants to achieve with the implementation of this action? So this is going to be, again, text that the city needs to provide in English in order for it to be evaluated for the city challenge. So please keep that in mind. Short, concise, but the relevant information. No? And now here, if you take a look at this data, then it's better that the summary is done keeping in mind that some of the information is already given. So be consistent with that, because we are looking at that, and many times we find that the information that is being selected is contradictory to the summary. So please be consistent there. And for example, the type of action, whether this is an awareness action, whether this is an infrastructure intervention, whether this is a policy or an action plan for just a sector. I would like to also notice here, what you saw before in action plans can only be overarching plans, so with different sectors in pursuit of mitigation or adaptation of climate change. But in here, for example, a mobility plan should be reported under actions because it's just covering one sector. A biodiversity plan. So if it's only for one sector, it should be reported under actions. Please make sure you really report it as such. No? And in type of action, there is the chance to put action plans, but that is for one sector. So you will be able to choose whether this is a mitigation action or an adaptation action, or mitigation with a secondary focus on adaptation. Also, you will be able to define what are the boundaries. So whether this is involving the community or government operations, to which level this action is being implemented, and then also the scope, the impacts, whether this is going to have transboundary impacts or not. And then also the years, and we are going to be looking that the status of the action is consistent with the reported impact year and anticipated impact delivery year. So please make sure that you report the data consistently. No? Also here, there is a supporting document needed, and please note that the jury will also be looking at this, so please send the supporting document with an extract with relevant information in English so that the evaluators can read it. No? So please make sure you send that, and yeah, we've seen many cities, they are lacking this, but we ask again, please, try to have this relevant information not lost in no translation would be the then in governance, and then we ask if the city is part of a higher level of set of actions, for example, or if it's binding for lower levels of government. No, so the city can simply indicate that. And also we ask information on financial information, and we are going to be looking that this is consistent. How? So we ask for the budget, and then we also ask for what will be the cost for the local government, and the primary source for funds. Please note that if the city is stating that the cost for the local government is 0, then they cannot choose that the primary source for funds is local. So they have other possibilities, national, subnational, private partnership. So please make sure this is consistent. Also, the financial status needs to be consistent. No, cities can also report the anticipated job creation, the implementation of the action, and other aspects that you are going to see now. Also, the sectors specifically where the actions will be implemented, and the area of impact. No? So this is to see exactly where is the action falling. Also, these for mitigation actions, very important, estimates of emissions reductions over time. Any of these values is really helping the city with their score in capacities, in vision, and also in combating climate change, if they have these estimates of emissions reduction. No? So if you have these available, please reported consistently if you are reporting the 3 of them. These are mandatory fields actually for mitigation actions. And at last, we have the co-benefits of the action. Please look at what are the co-benefits that are expected with the implementation of the action and simply tick them consistently. Now let's look at examples. So we have from UMIA again, all these actions that you will see, they are different in kind of action, and that's why we wanted to show you them. So green parking purchase, a model for smart mobility solutions in urban development. Voluntary basis for reduced parking standards for employee parking. Less car use and increased number of pedestrians, cyclists, and users of public transport. It gives the real estate owner the possibility to provide properties with an environmental focus while making savings with fewer parking purchases. The city, on the other hand, will benefit from better conditions to generate growth on a sustainable and high-dense city and reduce car dependency among employees. Excuse me, please. Hi, I'm sorry about that. Okay, we continue. Car and bicycle sharing for employees. Car sharing unit. Some of the cars are driven by biofuel and all of the cars are energy efficient. It's mainly for the municipality employees, but it's also open for the public. The employees can also use the bicycle sharing. So you see here, this is an scheme and also infrastructure, no? Action plan for better air quality. So this is the kind of unisectoral plan that I was telling you about. Better air quality with actions focusing on transport and mobility management. 4 subject areas, actions in street infrastructure, actions focusing on the emitting source, governance, and influence on traffic behavior, planning, and land use. Revised with a wide representation of stakeholders and organizations in the region. Let's look at this infrastructure action. Actors in the UMIA region, building a biogas plant in Venice to be used in cars in the UMIA region. Taxi cabs and vehicles at the airport are some of potential users. 100% renewable electricity. UMIA Energy, the municipality-owned utilities company, offers 100% renewable electricity, 2.3 terawatts hour. About 80% of UMIA residents buy electricity here, the remainder from other energy companies on the market. Pedal for Metal. This is an awareness program directed, aimed at the UMIA's region workplaces by competition in the workplace. The purpose of Pedal for Metal is to increase the share of work trips and business trips by bicycle while reducing commuting by car in the UMIA region. So you can see there is it's very varied in the way which cities can report their actions. So please don't think that because this is a smaller city that is reporting with less resources, there is a lot of possibilities for them to report, right? In awareness, also in infrastructure, in action plans. Also, they can report something that is under development. And now let's look at the last sheet, which is the mobility data. As I was telling you, this is something mandatory for those cities that want to go for the special mobility mention, at least the modal splits. Yeah, so cities have to describe how their transport system is composed of, no? What are the modal splits? And then there are other features of the transport system and mobility, like energy consumption that can be reported here, also access to public transport, so percentage of areas within 400 meters of public transport, trip duration, road safety, and also in regards to plans, what is the priority of their mobility plan. This can be ticked, this can be shown by the city. And mobility plans can also be reported as an action, as an individual action. Okay, so that is in regards to mobility. And that is all from my side. In the end, please raise your hand, or you can raise it now if you have any question. Yeah, it will be very enriching actually if you can share with us your question. Otherwise, you can also send it to the carbon@icla.org. Thanks a lot. Back to Jennifer. Jennifer, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Carla, for that very in-depth review of all the different pieces that make up the cCR. And especially since you're not feeling so well, it's not so easy to talk for so long under such circumstances. So really appreciate that. I am going to go very briefly through the evaluation framework because this is all reviewed in the OPCC instructions, which you should have all received and reviewed in advance of this, or if not in advance, definitely after this webinar. So everything I will say now is just a repeat. So I think what Carla had to say is really the more detailed aspects of our call. If I could go to the next slide, please. Excellent. So I'm just going to focus a little bit on what happens after the 29th of September when the deadline closes for submitting a candidacy as an OPCC city. And this is first a quantitative analysis of all the data that your city, as well as other cities in your respective country and globally have submitted. And in order, once this data has been reviewed, ICLA together with Accenture, which is a consultancy hired to do this process, will look for and finalize 3 to 5 of the top cities per country. And then together with this quantitative analysis, there will be a qualitative analysis. And this is where the additional documentation that your city has provided will help to really reinforce and highlight what your city is doing to combat climate change. And from those two, we will get those 3 to 5 cities, and then Accenture will reach out to the different 30 WWF offices that are participating in the City Challenge to just confirm that the cities that are most visible are actually the ones that are performing at the strongest rate. Of course, we cannot pretend to know every city across the globe, so we really rely on this partnership that we develop with our local WWF offices and their insights. And then upon that confirmation, the data will be then sent to the international expert jury, and there will be 2 jury meetings. The first jury meeting will select the national winners, and the second jury meeting will select the global winners. If I could just go to the next stage, the next slide. Just to give you an idea of who has been on our jury in the past, we're in the process of finalizing this year's jury. Many of these same names will be included. But as you can see, the jury represents most parts of the globe. It's a mix of academic institutions, research organizations, UN agencies, development banks, as well as city networks. For example, ICLE, the Secretary General of ICLE sits on our jury, as well as C40, etc. So together, these people have a pretty good understanding of what cities are doing and definitely have the competencies to review and select the winning cities. Next slide, please. I might skip this and just encourage you to review instead the OPCC instructions, as this is taking directly from there, and then you can really highlight and understand what the jury will be looking for with more focus in the instructions. Again, questions can always be made to us, but otherwise I'm just reading out loud what is already provided to you, and I think it might be more interesting to ask any questions that you might have. So next slide. And well, now I guess we can open up to questions if there are any. And just to highlight again, this is our contact information if you have any other questions and or if you want to talk to the representative WWF or ICLE in your region or country, we can also guide you to their contact information as well. So thank you from my side, and thank you again, Carla, for all of the information on city reporting to the cCR.
Thanks, Jennifer. Do we have any questions? I don't think that is the case.
Okay, well, if you don't have a question at the moment, we are certainly available for questions afterwards. And please do note down our information. And otherwise, happy reporting, happy city reporting. We look forward to seeing some very ambitious cities to tackle the urgent issue of climate change. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Ciao.